The latest Disney blockbuster, based on one of their amusement park rides, features Emily Blunt and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson setting sail for adventure. Let's talk Jungle Cruise. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new Disney film Jungle Cruise. You can see it in theaters now, or for $30 extra with your Disney Plus Premier Access, you can watch it at home on the comfort of your couch, much like maybe you did earlier in the year with Cruella or Raya and the Last Dragon, or unfortunately for Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow. We'll hear more about that, I think, as the weeks continue with her lawsuit against Disney. But let's talk now about Jungle Cruise. And before we get started, if you are new to Dan Reviews It, I want to thank you for finding this video. Please think about subscribing down below. You can hit that like button as well. That helps out the channel. And of course, comment. Did you see Jungle Cruise? How did it grab you? I have been known sort of this year for being a little harsh on some of these Disney movies, even though I gave fairly decent grades to Raya and the Last Dragon and Luca. I was told that maybe I was a bit too harsh. I have gone on the record and raised my Raya grade from a B plus to an A minus. But Cruella, well, that stands at a C minus. I did not care for that movie. So let's see if Jungle Cruise fares any better. So it starts with Emily Blunt here, playing Dr. Lily Houston, or Houghton maybe, on an event as she's an adventurous, quirky scientist searching for this tree of life, which she wants to study for its supposed healing properties. Her and her brother slash assistant, played by Jack Whitehall, team up with the steamboat captain, Frank Skipper Wolf, a cynical but kind of playful guy, played here by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I guess we just call him Dwayne Johnson now, right? The Rock is kind of old news. But they are enlisting his help to find the Tree of Life. But, of course, they run into some obstacles and threats along the way. And the cast is rounded out by Paul Giamatti, Edgar Ramirez, and Jesse Plemons. So I did actually enjoy this more than Cruella. Let's start there. I thought this was kind of a fun movie, to be honest. I think it definitely has some flaws. So I guess maybe let's talk about those first. First of all, I think the most glaring flaw in this film is that it does have a bit of an originality problem. This calls from a lot of really famous adventure movies, including Disney's own Pirates of the Caribbean, but also a bit from Indiana Jones, a bit from The African Queen, if you want to go way back to, I guess, the early 50s with that one. Road to El Dorado. I mean, there's a lot of scenes here that are just taken directly from some of that other stuff. And I was thinking about this today because I watched this about 24 hours ago. I was thinking, why does this not quite affect me as much as it did in Cruella? Because one of my biggest complaints about Cruella was its originality problem. And I think there's a couple reasons why. Number one, these are characters that we don't already know. Cruella, we already knew. She's one of my favorite Disney villains, so maybe there were some big shoes to fill. I don't know. But, you know, the placement of the era wasn't quite right for the movie, and the music was all just completely generic and that sort of thing. You can watch my rant about Cruella if you want to get more information about that. But here, even though the story and some specific scenes even are not all that original, I think Blunt and Johnson are rising to the challenge with this great chemistry. Not that Emma Stone and Emma Thompson didn't have good chemistry as well, but, you know, it was just Disney trying to be so dark and so, you know, hard. And here, they just want to make a fun adventure movie. And to be honest, it's a bit refreshing. You know, Cruella didn't probably have to be PG-13, but they made her, you know, a little bit too dark and murdery and all that. And here, you know, I'm going through a lot of the old Disney movies. If you love Disney and the history of Disney, check out my Dan Does Disney reviews. I do them either with my buddy Joe or my buddy Tim, and we're just going through all of them from the late 30s on, and currently we're in the early 50s. So we've seen a lot of these adventure type movies that are starting to have some bigger budgets. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, you know, comes to mind as a big success there. But, you know, the truth is, this movie harkens back to a lot of those old school, 40s, 50s, 60s Disney movies that are just trying to have fun. Now, yes, there's some peril here as well, as there are in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. That's true. I can't deny it. But this movie and Johnson's character goes all in as always, and Emily Blunt, of course, never phones in a performance. So the two of them together are a delight to watch on screen. They really are. Their banter back and forth is fun. They get some good jokes in there, some good barbs, and a couple of interesting things do happen along this journey that do sort of give you a little bit of pause and say, okay, where's this going? Who's good and who's bad? And there's some trust issues between the crew here that they explore a little bit. So it does a few things differently enough. I do think there's a bit of a heavy CGI reliance. And that is one thing that I'm finding about these old 40s and 50s Disney movies where, everything was, of course, practical. They didn't have CGI effects back then. And I think there is something to be said for doing those practical effects. There's a tiger in this movie, and obviously it's completely a CGI tiger and all of that kind of stuff. All the animals, have to be CGI. And that's, I get it. But I think it does sort of take a little bit away from the movie when it's so heavily CGI. When you don't even hardly believe that these characters are even at sea, it does sort of take a little bit away from it. But look, this is a fun movie. And to go back to another of my Cruella issues, the soundtrack. This soundtrack is is it James Newton Howard or something? James Howard Newton, whatever. He did like the Hunger Games movies, and he scored a lot of, recent movies of this sort of action vein. And the movie starts off with this sort of orchestral version, instrumental version of Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. And I thought, wow, that's something different. And so right away it hooked me with that. That song comes up again later on in the film. And if you're not a Metallica fan, if you're not a pop music fan of the 90s, okay, maybe you didn't even recognize it. Maybe to you it was just sort of, a sweeping orchestral piece setting the tone for the film. I think it works in either case. I think if you're a Metallica fan, you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting and new. And if you're not, you just think it's setting the pace maybe appropriately. So either way, I really liked the soundtrack here and the score, which is something I can't say about Cruella either. Also, the director here, I'm not positive how to pronounce his name, but Jaume, perhaps, Colette Serra. So he's best known lately for doing a lot of these Liam Neeson thrillers that are sort of all the same, dime a dozen, The Commuter and stuff like that. But he also directed this movie called The Shallows, which does take place almost entirely in the water. It's a Blake Lively movie, and that's a really, really great thriller. So I don't know if, he sort of honed some water skills on there, but, he gets a lot out of that movie, The Shallows, that maybe wasn't quite there on the page, but he made it exciting. And I think he does the same for this movie. Maybe some of these scenes that maybe read more like, okay, well, this is just a kind of ripoff of this movie. I think he brings it to life a little bit more than maybe another director could have. And then, with Emily Blunt and Dwayne Johnson, working so well off each other, it sort of just oozed, I think, from the page onto the screen pretty easily. So look, this movie is not outstanding. It's not up there with Raya the Last Dragon and some of the other Disney movies of the last couple of years, but it is great to get back to a fun adventure movie. It does veer in the second half into like fantasy, which I have mixed feelings about because it's a bit of a tonal shift, but overall, I did have fun watching this movie. And so I'm going to leave it with a B minus. Look, it's just not as original as I would have liked it to be, but it's hard to deny the chemistry here. It's hard to deny that I had a good time watching it. And so I think that is an appropriate grade for this movie. And if there's a Jungle Cruise 2, I'd be on board for it. It doesn't, I mean, we're not going to do spoilers, of course. The ending doesn't leave us necessarily thinking, okay, this is going to have a sequel. I think it's a closed up enough story. But look, Disney loves to print money, obviously, and withhold it from Scarlett Johansson. So if there is a Jungle Cruise 2, I would be on board for it, no pun intended. So there you go. One of the maybe better Disney properties of late, much better than Cruella for sure. And yes, I admit my Raya grade was a bit harsh at first. My Luca grade might be harsh too. I may have to watch that before the end of the year again. Maybe that deserves a B plus. I don't know, but I think B minus is good for Jungle Cruise. If you go in, kind of just hoping for a fun movie, I think you're gonna get it. I really do. So thanks for watching, and we will see you back here next time. Bye.